Hi, quick disclaimer. I don't know how to pronounce any of the stuff in this video, so it's very likely that I'll mess up at some point during this, but please don't get mad. Okay, on to the video. Murimin. The people of Murim. Martial artists. Their names and appearances are prevalent throughout the wide landscape of manhwas and even some manga, yet the quality of their implementation can vary drastically from series to series. I won't claim to know much about Korean culture or that I'm an expert on these things, so I just want to make it clear that I'm analyzing these stories based on just that, the quality of the story, and nothing else. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Martial arts is a genre that's been very oversaturated recently, and this is very much a product of the times and coincides with the rise of the isekai over in Japan. And not surprisingly, there's a lot of connections that can be made between the two genres. Isekais are usually power fantasies with lackluster plots and copy-pasted worlds, and modern martial arts stories are often power fantasies with a lack of central plot, or at least an extremely generic one. And most of the ways that the plot moves forward in these stories is through contrivances or misunderstandings, which can only stay fresh a certain amount of times. And further down that road, the contrivances in these manhwas specifically are usually driven by some character offending the honor and dignity of some other person, say by stepping on his shoe by accident. And in response to that seemingly small inconvenience, the character that has just been slightly wrong goes out and uses every ounce of his power, money, and prestige imaginable to ruin the life of his now mortal enemy. And whenever I see this, I immediately think, what? Because no one acts like this. That's not realistic in the slightest. I don't go walking down the road, accidentally bump into somebody, and have the fucking FBI, CIA, and BBC breaking down my door. And that's the problem with a lot of these stories. The elements of honor and virtue often seem tacked on the story, just to give it a reason to exist, and not as a genuine ingrained part of the world. And for a bit, I thought this may have been a problem with martial arts stories as a whole. But that thought immediately left my head when I found The Breaker, and its sequel, The Breaker: New Waves. Hi, quick interjection. I was reading Cultivators in the City to find footage for this video, and I came across probably one of the best examples of how utterly ridiculous some of these martial arts stuff are. So this guy, he's like, his legs are broken or something, or he's paralyzed, and our protagonist, the main character, like goes out of his way. He's very kind about it, and he says, "Oh, I can fix your legs for you," and this man who has just been shown a like completely unconditional act of kindness for some reason goes, "Yes, please fix my legs, but if you happen to fail, I'll break your legs instead." Which, like, what? Why would you do that? That's not gonna make more people want to offer. That's not gonna make him want to offer. And I mean, he does end up healing his legs, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you actually healed my legs. Thank you so much. You are now my savior. Here, take my daughter and my Lamborghini and all of my money." And I just felt like including that because it's so ridiculous sometimes. It's funny though, I'll give it that. But anyways, yeah, back to the video. The Breaker is an old martial arts story originally published in August 31st, 2007, and written by Jung Kook Jin and illustrated by Park Jin Hwan. The Breaker is the antithesis of all the negative things I mentioned earlier. Each element of the stable martial arts story feels right at home with the rest of the world, and even more so with the characters that inhabit it. As much as I would like to get right into the analysis of the story, I doubt very many of you guys would have read this, so I might as well give you a brief introduction to The Breaker. Our story opens in a familiar place, our main character getting the shit kicked out of him. While the opening is a tad cliche, it does wonders for establishing some basics about our main character, and from this moment on the story turns into anything but a cliche tale. So after our protagonist, Yi Shiwon, is done getting beaten up and extorted, he gets to see a man, in tropical shirts and shades, standing above him, who asks him for directions to the school that Shiwon goes to. And after receiving these directions, the man makes fun of Shiwon for being a coward and not fighting back. After Shiwon goes to his classes, we find out that this man who asked for directions was none other than Shiwon's new teacher and goes by the name of Han Chun-woo. A bit of time passes, and as Shiwon is walking back home and contemplating his existence, he sees Chun-woo fighting with several men and winning, single-handedly. Envious of his teacher's strength, and pushed into it by his teacher's biting remarks, Shiwon asks to become Chun-woo's disciple, and through showing his dedication, eventually earns himself a spot under the mysterious man. Throughout the opening, we see hints that Chun-woo isn't the man we think he is, and his frivolous attitude often falls away to reveal a more serious side. In the later chapters, after Shiwon starts learning and improving under his master, we start to see the core themes of honor and strength unearth themselves and exert their influence on the story and world. This isn't much of a spoiler since it's told to the readers in the very first few chapters, but I guess spoiler warnings for The Breaker. Shiwon's master in reality carries the title of Gunmun Ryong, otherwise known as the Nine Earth Dragon. He's an entity which broke the unwritten rules of the Murim world using his strength and willpower alone, and conquered the 9 seats of the Arts of the Dragon. To explain this in a little more detail, every once in a while, the Martial Arts Alliance, which is like the government but for martial artists, hosts a tournament for the seats of 9 different martial arts, which are considered as supreme in their spheres. Different martial artists from different clans would come to see who was the strongest at a certain technique. While it's not outlawed to take multiple seats at once, in fact, in a previous tournament somebody had claimed 3 seats for themselves, it would be considered disrespectful for someone to even think of claiming all 9. That is, until Shen Wu came and won all the seats from the major clans, which spent their entire lives training to reach that peak. After that day, Shen Wu was regarded by all who knew of his strength as an amazing man. Yet due to his crime of claiming all 9 seats, the world of martial arts turned against him. This is part of the conflict we see come into play in the background of the Breaker. Due to his hatred for the Martial Arts Alliance and plot against them, the Nine Arts Dragon was to be hunted down for his crimes, of which we will come back to later. But even during this manhunt, his pursuers had a grudging respect for him. Even though it went against the society which raised them, some Murimin had no choice but to respect the man, due to his incredible strength and daring. And that, I believe, is one of the 2 pillars which holds up the martial arts world: strength. The strong stand above the weak, and the weak have no choice but to respect the strong. Age or social standing does not matter. Power reigns supreme. And this aspect is the one that is captured so often in the other martial arts stories I talked about, where those with strength will do anything to stand above those without. However, in my opinion, these stories are missing the other pillar which balances out the supremacy of strength: honor. Honor is the counterbalance to strength's overbearing nature, and is the reason the Breaker works where other stories seem to fail. The strong in the world of the Breaker don't take pleasure in going out of their way to stomp on the weak. If they're challenged by those below them, the strong will show their might, but if the weak stay in their own lanes and show respect to those with power, then no blood will be spilled. And this idea of honor is what is represented by our main character, Shiwun. Shiwun is dedicated to a fault. When he's kicked down, he uses every bit of strength he can muster to stop himself from giving up, and his steadfast nature and relative lack of strength stand in sharp contrast with Gumun Ryong himself. While the Nine Arts Dragon isn't shown to be a bad person, he clearly has no qualms about killing when the time is right, which is the product of the world he was raised in. Shiwun, on the other hand, absolutely refuses to kill those who are in a disadvantageous position, and strives to solve conflict without casualties. This is a standard trope: the master who kills and the student who spares, who eventually changes the master's ideals and wins him over in the end. However, this isn't the way the story goes in The Breaker. While Shiwun tries his best to spare those his master seeks to kill, it's clear that at least at this point, the Nine Arts Dragon isn't in a mood to listen, as his end goal will require even more blood to be spilled. While both of them show sharp dedication in standing to their ideals, the way they go about achieving this is where we see a stark difference, at least in the way the story is framed. The Nine Arts Dragon is supreme. He is the strongest, and when he's presented with the challenge, he smashes his way through it with raw might and vigor. It's possible that he has the same traits as a disciple, but at least in the story we never see this on display. Shiwun, on the other hand, when faced with an insurmountable challenge, gets beaten up, often to the point of death, and shoved to the ground, but every time, he stands up and gives not an inch, in his mind or his spirit. And this is the quality which garners him respect from the world. So here we have it, 2 pillars standing opposed to each other, on opposite ends of a wide spectrum, one representing the extreme honor and dignity that a Murimin should carry, and the other representing the domineering strength that can put all others to shame. It's not much wonder that we eventually find them having to clash in some way or another. An insurmountable force meeting an immovable object. It's a classic debate, and one that we will have to touch on more next time. This video has gone on for a very long time. I didn't expect myself to have this much to say about The Breaker, but this just shows how highly I think of this property. This has been kind of a thematic review, but hopefully the next video will be more of an analysis of the presentation, because I have a lot more to say about this amazing world. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you stick around for part 2. By the way, I'd like to say thank you to the Breaker Wiki for some of the info found on this video. I don't remember every detail about this series, so I had to look for some of them on there, and it was really helpful. Thank you again, and bye!